everybody, I hope this video finds you all well today. Today I'm going to talk on a topic that I brought up in the video I made on the shenanigans of the fitness industry and how they're trying to sell you stuff not based on what you need but what you are looking for based on, I suppose, false models of how quickly you can get it. So today I want to talk about the hierarchy of strength. Now, many people in today's world are getting more into the fitness and wellness lifestyle because they realize that if they don't, there's going to be serious repercussions down the line. And what has become more popular in recent years is strength training. Now, I have been lifting weights since 1987 when I started my physical education degree in the University of Limerick. So this year it's 30 years that I'm pumping iron. Now, strength training is incredibly important for everybody, and the reason being is that it is the second top predictor of your entire lifespan. The stronger you are, the more likely it is you're going to live a long and healthier life. Strength is incredibly important for bone density, and the number of people now with osteoporosis is climbing, year upon year. Strength training is the only real avenue to make a difference there, to halt that bone loss. And for younger people who start strength training early, they're going to maximize their bone density at the appropriate time. So strength training is also incredibly important if you want to lose body fat, right? If you strength train regularly with intelligent program design, with the appropriate frequency and the appropriate recovery, you're going to build muscle tissue. That muscle tissue is going to translate into a much more dynamic metabolism, so that the food that you eat is going to go into tissue repair instead of into your fat cells, storing fat. So if you're a person out there and you're thinking, I want to lose weight, I want to get in shape, do I go for a run or do I go to the gym? The answer every time is you go to the gym. You learn how to lift weights properly with the appropriate intensity and under the correct guidance and intelligent program design that's progressive. Now, before you even begin to go into that strength training universe, a couple of things have to be in place. And this is why I've called this video the hierarchy of strength. Before you're going to be able to lift weights that are heavy enough that actually means something in terms of being able to build muscle mass, some of the things have to be in place. The first foundational thing that has to be in place is flexibility. Now, people gloss over this stuff because they think, I just want to skip to the good stuff. I want to do some heavy deadlifts and squats and bench presses, and I don't really want to do the stretching. You're doing yourself a great disservice if you skip out. Now, if you're not flexible enough to get into a full position in the squat, what's going to happen is your muscles are not going to recruit in the appropriate fashion. You could end up over-recruiting your lower back. You could end up causing injury to your knees, as just one example. You see, a good squat is predicated upon being able to get a good squat position. So if you can only go halfway down because you've got flexibility restrictions, all you're going to do is you're going to train dysfunctional patterns of recruitment within your muscles. So flexibility is incredibly important, because without the appropriate flexibility in all the areas of your body, your basic posture is going to be dysfunctional. And if your basic posture is dysfunctional, don't expect it to get all of a sudden amazing doing complex movement patterns. Flexibility is non-negotiable for everybody. You're going to need a minimum standard of range of motion throughout all the joints in your body, from your ankles to your hips to your shoulder girdle to your spine. Its ability to flex, its ability to extend, its ability to laterally flex and rotate. So all of these areas are areas that I test when I'm testing a person biomechanically to prescribe their initial stretching program. So if you haven't got a stretch program that's customized for you, you're basically just, you're winging it. And if you're winging it, you're not going to get very predictable results that are ones that you would like. So generic stretching is kind of like getting your piano tuned and every single key is tuned to the exact same degree. That piano isn't going to sound very good. Some keys need to be tightened a little bit, some need to be loosened a little bit, and it's that fine tuning that creates an instrument that plays beautiful music. Your body is like that beautiful instrument. It's not going to play beautiful music unless you fine-tune it. So fine-tuning your flexibility is the first foundational starting point. Flexibility is the foundation stone on which all other qualities of movement and sporting ability are built upon. So it must be individualized. So your first port of call is to get yourself biomechanically assessed to find out where your restrictions are. What should you stretch? What should you avoid stretching? It gets a little bit more complicated than that, but that is the basic elements. Now, how frequently should you stretch? Well, it depends on how tight you are. I'll give different recommendations to different clients depending on the inherent mobility within their joints and depending on on any other number of factors. Sometimes I might prescribe more stretching for a client simply if they are in a high stress zone, because stretching not only helps the joints to optimize their position and optimize your exercise performance, it's a wonderful way of recovering from exercise, and it's a wonderful way from recovering from the stresses and strains of life. But generic stretching is not really the way to go. Now, the second rung on the ladder in the hierarchy of strength is stabilization. Now, an awful lot of people have bandied about the term core control, and I don't really know how much meaning it has anymore in the modern world. But basically, you've got to be able to stabilize any movement pattern that you try to carry out in the gym or anywhere else for that matter. Now, that stabilization is a combination of being able to get into the right position with your flexibility and being able to execute that movement with appropriate balance and quality. So there's a lot of things that come into factor when it comes to stabilizing. You're going to need small muscles. For example, the small muscles around your shoulder girdle, which comprise your rotator cuff, they're going to be working very hard if you're doing something like a bench press or an overhead press. So if those muscles are weak, your body can't actually stabilize the big, gross movement pattern. If you are squatting and your pelvic girdle is highly unstable, don't be surprised if you're not, number one, you won't be able to lift very heavy weight, and number two, you might not be able to achieve a full range in the squat pattern. And that full range might not be achievable, not due to flexibility restrictions, but in this case from stabilization restrictions. So this is another thing to take into account. If you neglect your stabilizer system, which is a little bit more complicated than simply training, small stabilizing muscles. It's actually a beautiful harmony between small stabilizing muscles and then the gross muscles that generate the biggest power in the movement. It's basically a symphony between the two. But you need to do some work on your stabilization. If, for example, you cannot stabilize yourself in a basic plank position, for example, then, is it likely that you're going to be able to stabilize a heavy squat? With a heavy load on your back, moving through space with quite a complex movement pattern? Well, it's not very likely. So there are certain foundational things that need to be in place. You need to be able to stabilize your pelvis. Your spinal muscles need to be able to fire correctly, and they need to be able to fire, over a long period of time. Many other factors need to come into place. So one of the methods I use for stabilization training is Pilates, because I find it to be very powerful. There are others. You can do work on a Swiss ball and many other exercises. There's multiple modalities that will help in that area. But my personal favorite would be Pilates and some Swiss ball work. And I like to integrate that. I like to use that now as my foundation stone to get clients ready to do the big lifts, like the squats, like the deadlifts, like the shoulder presses. Because if you can't stabilize your body weight in simple patterns, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to do it with heavier weights. I was training a client last week and I was doing a split squat with her, and I had tested her and I already saw that she had a high degree of ankle mobility restrictions. So we've been working on that for several weeks. So the ankle mobility was improving, but I just did a little I started her off in the split squat and she was only getting less than halfway down. And I thought, damn, that's the bloody ankle flexibility that's really restricting her there. And then I thought again, I said, hang on a second, maybe this is a stabilization issue. So I gave her a little gondola pole to hold on to while doing the exercise, and lo and behold, the woman was able to get a full range in the split squat. So there's a classic example of possibly misidentifying a flexibility restriction when it's actually a stability issue. This woman wasn't able to coordinate the stabilization of the movement through the full range. So once I give her a little bit of support, then that was possible, and now I'm going to be able to progress her on to the more standard version of the split squat with extra load. So those are the first two things that need to be in place before you work on your strength. You need to have your flexibility, you need to have your stability, and then you can start training with strength in a way that's actually going to move you forward. I've had clients come to me from other gyms, and I've asked them what they've been doing. I'll do a biomechanical assessment on them, I'll find their deficiencies. And one lady had got some amazing transformation in her physique, and she was training very intensely with weight training, but I had tested her and I had found an awful lot of biomechanical imbalances in her system. And I said, were you doing deadlifts? Yes. And I said, well, how did you find them? And she said, well, every time I did them, my back was killing me, but I just kind of sucked it up and I did it anyway. So she was getting a result on one level because she was doing intense work with load, and that was causing her body to create changes. But on another level, she was actually destroying her lower back. If she kept doing that long term, she could end up with a serious back problem. So that's a case of a person who skips past the flexibility and the stability stage. They dive straight into the strength change because they want to get results as quickly as possible. Now remember, in the video I made yesterday, you look it up on YouTube, short-term gain, long-term pain. There's a classic example of short-term gain, long-term pain. So if you don't work on your flexibility and stability, even if you're lifting heavy weights, doing the stuff that's recommended, the deadlifts, the squats, the lunges, the shoulder presses and whatnot, if you haven't trained your stabilizer system effectively first, you're actually going to end up getting injured in the long term, and that's very, very disillusioning. If all of a sudden you're going great and then you're injured and you're out of action, or you have to compromise your training, you're going to be out of action maybe for a long time, and then when people are out of action, they get depressed, they start eating rubbish food again to console themselves, and they pile all the weight back on, right? So strength is something that has to be respected. You have to earn the right to lift that heavy weight, and you earn that right by respecting what it takes to lift the heavy weight. For many clients, I'll be building them up over several months before I even think about doing a squat with them. It might be 2 to 3 months before I start squatting, because I've got an awful lot of corrective work to do before that, to make sure the client can hit the bottom position correctly, to make sure their glutes are firing and integrating correctly, to make sure their knees are stabilizing correctly, to make sure I have enough ankle mobility, to make sure I have enough thoracic extension, so that when I actually put load on them, it's going to mean something that moves them forward rather than something that breaks them down. Now, the final quality in the hierarchy of strength is power. Now, power is how quickly we can accelerate a load. So this would be things like snatches, kettlebell swings, any movement where you're accelerating a load as quickly as possible. Plyometrics would kind of come into this area as well. Fast, ballistic type movements. Now, the funny thing is, we're living in an era where a lot of people have access to YouTube video. They're seeing snatches, cleans and jerks, kettlebell swings, CrossFit type training, and they're looking at it and thinking, oh my God, that looks amazing. I want to be able to do that. And I totally get it. It's wonderful to be inspired by other people. It's wonderful to, get something that, motivates you to take action on your fitness goals. However, power is the last quality to be developed in the hierarchy of strength. We can only be powerful if we're already strong. Remember, if we want to lift a load and accelerate it very quickly, that's going to generate a ton of force within your joints, and that could be extremely destabilizing, and it could cause injury if you're not already very, very strong, right? So why would one start out with the end zone in mind, which would be power? Why would one start there, right? In order to be a good CrossFit athlete, in order to be a good power, Olympic lifter, or in order to do any sports that are ballistic, like tennis, like your golf swing, most sports require power, right? You cannot have power if you don't have strength. You can never optimize your strength if you don't have stability, right? And the foundation stone for all of these qualities is flexibility. So do you see where I'm getting at here, guys? You cannot run before you can walk. A child can't walk before it learns how to crawl. There are certain steps that cannot be skipped. You have to honour the process of the development of these qualities. So as if what's happening in a lot of gyms nowadays, in terms of the boot camps of the world, in terms of the CrossFit gyms of the world, people are going in doing battling ropes, which is a ballistic, essentially a power exercise. They're doing kettlebell swings and they don't have a modicum of lumbar or pelvic stability. They're doing Olympic lifts and their basic squat pattern is absolutely rubbish, let alone there's no strength there. So you cannot skip the stages in the process. If you do, number one, your chance of getting injury is very high, and number two, there is no way you're going to get anywhere near the results that you could get if you honour the process. All the top class athletes in the world have had to go through this process. They've got to do their flexibility work, they've got to do their stability work, they've got to do their strength work. When I was a competitive Olympic athlete, I've won gold medals at national level, I had to go through all of that process. I had to do, my flexibility work, which I had done from my diving and gymnastics previous. I had done a huge amount of work on stabilization with many years of Pilates, and I had done many years of strength training and optimized that with the best people in the business. So for me to be able to move into the Olympic lifting world, I was prepped for it. I had literally done decades of experience to be able to, go there. And people were surprised at how I got on, well so quickly. It's because I had all the foundation, I had the flexibility, I had the stability, and I had the strength covered for decades. So for me it was just a case of then grooving the technique, which is obviously tons and tons of practice has to go into that. So bear that in mind, anybody who wants to embark upon a fitness regime, anybody who's tempted to sign up for a boot camp or a power type class like CrossFit, if you haven't done your preparation with your flexibility, your stability and your strength, which takes actually years to build up, don't sign up for a class that involves power. Power is moving a weight very quickly through space, or it's something like sprinting. That's an example of power as well. It's accelerating a mass as quickly as possible through space. So you're not ready for power until you've covered your flexibility, your stability and your strength. So that's what I call the hierarchy of strength. Make sure you honour it and respect it, because if you do, you're actually honouring and respecting your own body. If you don't, it means you don't respect yourself. And if you don't respect yourself, what's the point of any of this? Many people get into the gym because they want to feel better about themselves. The foundation stone for feeling good about yourself is self-respect. So respect the hierarchy of strength, respect yourself, and you're going to get way better results in the long run, and you're actually going to feel good about yourself. You're going to learn to like yourself, and eventually you'll be able to love yourself. And that, my dear friends, is what this whole journey is all about. So if you want to find out more about me, please go to my website, clairerooney.com. That's CLAREROONEY. I've got a blog there, and I also have a book out, Cracking the Mind Body Code, and you can get information on that and links on that on my site. Thank you so much for watching this video. Tune in next time and I'll bring you some more musings on this whole fitness and health journey.